Hello, this is Scott Newberger with Lifecharge Consulting, and today I'm here with Dave Stitcher.
How you doing, Scott? Thanks
Hey,
for
how are
having me.
you?
All right.
Thanks for coming on
Thanks for inviting
the
me.
program here. We're going to talk a little bit about Dave today. He started off, originally he started off as a paper boy, then moved up to mowing lawns, and then eventually got into skiing shops,
And ski shops and
ski shops,
ditch digging,
ditch
construction,
digging.
a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, and finally he's into global marketing and sales,
Yes.
which is what he does professionally now. But there's another aspect of Dave that I asked him to come and speak with us about today, which is a little bit unorthodox. So as we normally do with Life Charge Post, is we ask the three questions. Tell me a little bit about your success. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how it's affected you and how it's affected others. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and if you'll just tell me a little bit about your success in life.
You bet. And I'll probably need you to repeat those three at
Okay.
some point in there. But
As we go along.
first one,
That's
tell
fine.
you a little bit about myself. And since we're talking about the unorthodox side of things, why don't we go ahead and start with that?
Sure.
I've had the chance to do a few things that not many people do. In fact, one thing that I've done, I'm probably a trace element as far as careers that people have done that. I was a comedian. That's not the trace element career, but I worked as a comedian. And as I was working initially as a comedian, a friend of mine had started working with a bungee jumping company.
Oh.
And I went to work. I was working one night at the comedy club, and my friend happened to be at the club, and he came up afterwards, and he introduced me to a man. He said, "Hey, I want you to meet this guy." He introduced me to the man he was working with, who was the owner of the bungee jumping company.
Okay.
And they had just acquired a contract to do what was called the 90 Days of Summer tour up through Montana and Idaho and Wyoming, and they needed somebody to work their microphone for them.
Wow.
And so they came to see me that night, and he told his boss, "Hey, I have a friend who, he does comedy, and maybe he'll be the right guy for us." And so after we met, things went well, and I ended up, we negotiated out the terms of what I get paid, and we went and did the tour, and the tour was awesome. Had a great time, pretty
Nice.
fun. Got to learn the wide world of bungee jumping, and that's the trace element thing that I was talking about. It's not what I'm going to concentrate the most on, but
Right.
not everybody got to do bungee jumping.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It seems like that would be something that you probably want a little comic relief when people are getting ready to take the big plunge on the bungee jumping.
Definitely. And I was a lot like a midway hawker,
Okay.
trying to call out to the people and get them over there.
Oh, sure.
We'd be in these small towns, and it's amazing how much liquid courage helps. They get a few beers in them, they're willing to do a few more things, and
Wow.
you get those big old cowboys. And it was interesting, you'd have girls who would jump a lot of time ahead of time. And then you get the big old cowboys coming in, and they didn't want anything to do with that. So I'd have to start teasing them a little bit. It's like, what if it doesn't have hoofs, hair, and horns? You're not going to ride it? Come on, big feller.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I gotta say too, I know Dave personally, and he is one of the funniest guys I know. So it definitely, you can see how you were successful in the comedy realm, because you've always been a very funny guy to me. So.
Well, I appreciate that. No, thank you. And I think I got it from my dad. My mom was pretty funny too, but hers was more of a dry, honest humor. My dad, his was just, he could make anything funny.
Oh, that's great.
And I think for him too, a lot of it was he would reverse things a lot. Like he questioned the norms, and that was part of his humor.
Sure.
Like I remember one of the earliest things that he said. We were setting the table, and my mom was teaching me how to set the table. A fork on the left and different things and whatnot. And my dad just kind of said something like, "Well, why do we have to put the fork on the left?" And my mom says, "Well, I don't know. It's how it's always been." And he's like, "Well, what if I would have been the king who decided where it went? And I was right-handed, and I put it on the right side of the plate."
Right. What if I'm the one who established etiquette? And I wanted to do it differently.
Exactly. And so that kind of, that carried over. That made me think a lot of things, like question the norm. Why is it that way? And okay, if it just is, and that's the final answer. But a lot of things come out of that. A lot of different, which allowed me to kind of be more open to, if things weren't going the direction I felt inside, I kind of had this internal compass that I really appreciated, and didn't necessarily follow it as much as I should have sometimes as a kid. But as I got older, I really tried to find things that fit into that, and
sure,
and which is probably part of what led us here this evening, and that's what we were talking about, and so and that's probably good. We can segue into the comedy stuff off of that as well, because in comedy, I started out just kind of doing it for fun, some college money, and I'd met a man who owned a comedy club, a guy named Johnny B up Provo, Utah.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was fun. We did some shows, and after I did my first initial show on an open mic night, afterwards he came up afterwards and he said, "Hey, we'd love to have you come back next week and do another bit for us."
Opportunity knocks.
Exactly, and I had told all my friends the first night. I had loaded that place up with friends because I thought if I'm going down with close friends around.
Right. At least give me some support here. Please laugh, right?
Exactly. Well, even when they announced my name, I performed under the name Stitch. My name's Dave Stitcher, of course, so it worked out great. And when they announced my name, half the room lit up. So it was comforting. I thought, I could do no wrong at this point.
Good start, yeah.
And so, but when they asked me to come back the second time, I thought I should challenge myself a little bit. And I didn't tell anybody the second time. I had one friend who went with me.
Wow.
A friend that was more like a brother. We'd been friends for life, and he went with me, and it went just as good the second time without loading the place up with a bunch of friends. And
so you passed the true test.
Yeah.
And then you knew that you had something.
Yeah, and that was that was an internal test for me. But I thought, hey, if I can make a room full of strangers laugh, I didn't tell the same stories. I wrote all new material and tried to get it to where we did just some different stuff, and it was great. It was awesome. Well, on the way out, they offered to pay me the next weekend. They say, actually 2 weekends after that. They said, "What are you doing 2 weeks from now?" And at the time, I was skiing for a local community college, racing on the ski team there, and I said, "Hey, I think ski season. We are not racing that weekend. I think I'll be around. Why? What you got?" And they said, "Well, we'll pay you $200. We need you to do 10 minutes on Thursday night, 10 minutes twice on Friday, and 10 minutes twice on Saturday at the 8 and 10 shows." I'm like, wait, let me get this straight. You're going to pay me $200 to do what I've been doing for free my whole life?
For less than an hour combined.
Exactly.
That's not bad.
They had some pretty good-looking waitresses, too. And I was young and single and not, didn't have this girlish figure at the time.
So, good opportunity, I think.
It was, exactly. And from there, it just kind of catapulted. I just kind of started getting paid. I'd worked a month at it and got paid on my third gig. And I didn't. From there forward, I just got paid, and I met people as I was doing it. They've been 6-7 years and haven't got paid yet. And for them, and the thing that was different with me, and I think it was part of my success, was I didn't necessarily start out wanting to be a comedian.
Okay.
I found out I could be a comedian, but it wasn't my internal drive.
Right.
And so as things progressed and as it went better and better. Where for me that was a hard thing because most people, because that's what they wanted, as it went better and better, then they would they felt better about things and they just advanced further and they went the next step. Where for me, I didn't really crave the spotlight. I liked making people laugh. I like getting paid to make people laugh, and sometimes you got paid really well to make people laugh. So,
but it was never really kind of a life goal of yours.
No,
to become a comedian.
Yeah, no, and in fact. Probably the opposite. I remember 4 years before I actually did my first performance, we had been at that same club, and just there one night, and I thought to myself, could I do that? And I thought, no, I really don't want to. And it just happened to be that the next time, 4 years later, when the man who owned the club, I just met him at a little get together, and he said, "Yeah, you should, you're pretty funny. You should come do my club, check out my club." I say, "I'll come check it out." He said, "No, you should come do an act." I'm like, "No, you got the wrong guy."
Little did you know.
Exactly. My buddies were all there. My buddies are funny, and that helped. And they're like, "Man, you should go. You've always made us laugh. You should go do it." And so it helped to have supportive friends. So
yeah. Always.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can support you into bad things, but
well, yeah. That's another story.
That's true. Fortunately, that night they were supporting me in a good cause.
Yeah.
So I called. I set up to go out to the open mic night, and we did it. And
that's awesome.
Over the course of the next probably about 3 years, 4 years, I started performing more and more and more. And I got the opportunity to go with the bungee jumping company, and kind of just it was a great thing because you met a lot of people in a lot of situations
from different walks of life, I'm sure.
Exactly. Like my biggest show I ever did was 4,500 people, and half the stadium was filled. It was a stadium for a Special Olympics.
Wow.
The opening ceremonies for the Summer Special Olympics in Utah. And half the seats were filled with policemen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it led to a great thing. I thought, hey, I started off with, well, now's a good time to be committing a crime, it looks like. And so
opened up a whole avenue of jokes.
That's right. And, and all the way down to, different things. I did, commencement ceremonies for graduations of colleges to city functions, and you meet all kinds of people. And from there, I mean, it really opened up a lot of doors. I mean, you meet people. I met the governor. I met the mayor. The governor got impeached after that. It was Governor Meekum.
Okay.
So,
Coincidence.
I got to meet guys that had been shot down in World War II because I was working at a dinner that they were all being commemorated at, and I was the MC there, and so those things were really rewarding. But
Sure.
with time, I also found out that if you really want to have a career in that, I mean, unless you just want to be on the road and traveling and doing comedy clubs ad infinitum,
Right.
that you really need to get into the acting world.
Okay.
And that's where the real money is. I mean, that's where you can start to really develop something. You start doing movies and sitcoms and different things. I mean, you look at most of the guys that stick around. I mean,
Right.
even if they started in stand-up, eventually they have to end up there if they really want to make a career out of it. That's something more than just minimal pay for maximum amount of travel and free drinks.
to really make some money that you could support a family, that type of thing.
Right, exactly. And where I wasn't a drinker, the free drinks weren't a draw. And and like we talked earlier, I mentioned that being a comedian was never my goal. And as a kid, I mean, interestingly enough, my goal was always just to have a family. That was, to me, my personal biggest purpose in life. I had a really cool dad. I had a mom who was there to help me out, and I kind of wanted to pass the same thing along to kids of my own. And as I progressed further and further in comedy and had more and more success with it, it became a really big quandary for me. Because on the one hand, I'm succeeding and I'm doing something that not a lot of people necessarily succeed in, and seemed like every month it was just getting a little bit better. I was moving up the chain, working at better clubs. I was now in LA working at the Comedy Store, and Pauly Shore's mom ran that place.
Wow.
And
you even got to do a few cruises, if I remember correctly.
I did. I got to do a cruise through the South Pacific, 2-week cruise through there, and that was really fun. And I'm still getting travel paid for, and you get $1,500 for a 45-minute bit.
It's not bad.
That's not bad at all. And if they book you out for 5 nights, that's a good week.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you might have sat around for 3 months doing $75 a night gigs to get the big gig. Yeah. So when you break it out over the monthly. I think it
averages out, I guess.
Yeah, like my best year in comedy, I think I did $56,000, and I had like 295 nights in hotels on my taxes when I put them through.
Oh, wow. So, you almost didn't have to rent a place to live. You could just almost live in. It's not bad.
Yeah, and that didn't include the nights that I slept on friends' floors or whatever that people lived in the town where I was working, and maybe driving from Albuquerque back to LA, up to Seattle to just wherever the gigs came in, and they didn't come in. You couldn't once you get bigger, you can start setting a tour and whatnot. And I got this chance to go work in L.A. and I was working. Like I said, did the Comedy Store, Pauly Shore's mom's club, and a guy that I knew in Phoenix, Arizona. He worked with some professional golfers and whatnot. He was their manager. He knew a manager in L.A. who managed some pretty big names, and he introduced me to him, and I went over with him, and from there I met some people with some of the bigger agencies over there, and just kind of really started getting some good contacts, and things started really kind of progressing forward, and again, I should have been really happy. I should have been ecstatic about this. I mean,
not everybody has that opportunity,
right?
Like you said,
yeah, and I mean, you look at the future, and hey, if it keeps going the way it's going, I mean, you don't know. You could be dead tomorrow. You're only as good as your last performance, And
I guess in that business,
yeah, I mean, and and a lot of things, really, when you think about it, a salesman's only as good as his last month's numbers, and a broker's only as good as how much he did for his people, and
exactly,
so it's kind of that just get busy doing something. Don't keep telling me what you're gonna do or what you did.
Show me.
Show me what you're doing. But I really had a hard time trying to figure out why. Why did I feel, why wasn't I happy about this? Why wasn't I? And as I started to analyze it, I realized because it was taking me further away from what my core was. I wanted to be a dad who was at home with his kids. I
Right.
wanted to, and I thought, well, I could probably do that. I could probably spend a lot of time at home, but you can't turn things down if the right opportunity comes in. You
Right.
can't, and you miss a lot of things. You're gone. You get a 5-night run, and it happens to be over your kid's birthday. You either turn it down or you go do it.
Right.
And then so until you've really kind of made it so big, you can't pick and choose. And
So it's not quite that conducive to family life.
right,
To have that
exactly. Yeah, and so for me, it was that was kind of a hard thing because I just always imagined myself. Do I want to be at Joe's Bar and Grill, calling home and talking to my kids and seeing how they did out there in the middle of, yeah, it's Dad calling from Ottumwa, Iowa here, it's like Radar O'Reilly's home.
Right.
And so, it really made me stop and think. And I thought, well, yeah, but if I make it big, I'll be able to do this and that. We'll have money. We'll have,
Right.
all the things that come with it. And there's always again, like I said before, what if it doesn't work out? What if you're done tomorrow?
Right.
And where it wasn't like a thing that I just had this burning desire. I wasn't willing to go wait tables for 7 years in Hollywood just hoping to get my big break.
Get your chance. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great when they kept paying me to come do shows, and I kept getting booked out, and it was
Right.
easy money for a fun job. That was, and
But it really wasn't your passion.
no, not at all. And it made for a pretty big dilemma. But finally, one day, I just decided, I can't go further forward with this and start committing to bigger things, because for me, the question was not what if I don't succeed, but it was actually the opposite. What if I
Right.
succeed?
In something that I know is not necessarily my passion.
Yeah, but then I get tied to the money, and I get this and that, and I like, the lifestyle. What wouldn't be fun about, meeting
Right.
people and hobnobbing with, Hollywood folks, and, you see where people get to meet people. You look at like Bill Mayer, he's been
Yeah.
at the White House, and, it has potential to lead into something. And that was the part I liked, was the people you met, and the people you met on, on the periphery, the ones that were at the function that you may be emceeing or that you may be the comedian at, and then they talk to you afterwards. And that was what I really liked. And so, I had a big decision to make.
But I think you told me too that it all kind of came to a head at one point where you had to make a decision whether or not you really wanted to go into it big time or kind of scale back from it.
And that's exactly it. I was starting to get some bigger opportunities. I was starting to get some invitations to go and audition for some things that, again, and to that point, up to that point, things had always just kind of gone better the next step. So for me, in my mind, I had to think about it as, well, what if it continues in that same vein? And what if you do land the audition? What if you do get the part? What if you do end up at some point up on Saturday Night Live or whatever?
Right.
And it was a big thing. And hey, there was the factor too that I never liked to dress up. I hated it. That was also a factor. Not many kids hate
Dress
Halloween.
up for work.
Yeah, well, and even Halloween, like I hated costumes. I hated wigs and makeup, and that's a
Wow.
big part of that world too.
Yeah.
And but again, the money's good, and you start to do a lot of things, and so for me personally, it really gets down to the fact that it was leading me further away from what I had determined my personal success would be based around. And for me, what I wanted an employment, a career that allowed me to, be at my kids' baseball game.
Sure.
First off, I knew I wanted to have a family. I wanted to get married, and I wanted to have kids. And I'm not saying that makes me better than anybody else who went the opposite direction.
Right.
That's their goal in life, and if that's what they want to do, I'm
That's
just
their
saying I
passion.
had to be true to myself.
Well, and this is really kind of interesting because, in a sense, your success was deciding not to take the next step to be successful as a comedian,
Right.
and to really change and go for your passion, which was having a family.
Yeah, and I really didn't have an idea of how that was going to happen. I just knew I had to head that direction. And people talk a lot about, you got to go off into the unknown. You got to just take that step in that direction. And, a lot of people would have thought that I was already into the unknown and I was succeeding in the unknown, because they're like, wow, you're a comedian. Wow, isn't that great? You meet all these people. And sometimes it was hard too because other people were like, why would you walk away from that? Why would you?
Right.
Why? That's crazy. Why did you stop? And people that had seen me, friends that had been to shows, and people that I'd worked with, people I'd met along the road, and and now, I mean, even now, I look back and 20 years ago, guys that I knew 20 years ago that I opened up for, or that I worked with, are now, a few of them, not many, but a few of them are big names,
Very successful.
right? And you question, like, I mean, the shows went well, and I got as many laughs as they did, and where would I be?
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes back to haunt you a little bit, but it doesn't haunt too bad because, again, I've got 3 wonderful boys now, and I get to be home. Not only do I get to be home for their baseball games, I get to be they get to coach their baseball games.
Right. So really actively involved.
Right.
And I think this kind of answers a couple of questions that we always want to ask is, we talked a little bit about your success and how you've achieved it. The next question is how it's affected you. And it sounds like your decision not to go big time in the comedy world has really affected you in a positive way.
It has, yeah, definitely. I mean, and there's all the things that come with it. I mean, we know that world has, some allure to certain sides of things. I have an addictive personality that I try to keep under control as much as possible. And as you can tell, my right now, chocolate chip cookies are my addiction of choice.
We all have our addictions.
But yeah, I mean, definitely, I think that had I gone down that path, I could have quite easily, had I been successful, I could have ended up just like Belushi or John Candy or Chris Farley. And you hear the stories about those guys, and they came from similar backgrounds like I did, and some, I don't know how bad they wanted it or didn't want it, but for me, I just and this is something I've learned along the way, that you really need to determine what your own personal expectations are of yourself, and then I think the next step you need to do is determine which of those expectations are unreal expectations, or expectations based on ego. And by that I mean not what you necessarily really want, but what it's an expectation that the world expects this out of me, or my wife expects this out of me, and I'm not talking about good things like my wife expects me to be faithful. That's an obvious, at least in my world,
or to always mow the lawn or things like that.
Right? Yeah.
You may not want to do that, but it is expected of you, and it's something you should do. But I understand what you're saying. You should, when it comes to what you want to achieve in life, it really should be a matter of your own heart and your own desires, and not necessarily what you think other people want you to do.
Yeah.
Or want you to be.
Or what would make you the big man on campus. Because maybe you don't want to be the big man on campus.
Right.
And like for me, for example, the fame part of the thing that leads a lot of people from what it seems like, the famous and the whatnot, the only part about that I liked, like I said, was just that it opened doors to meet people.
To meet different.
Which was incredible.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the fame had no allure to me.
Sure.
But yet, for other people where that was a big thing for them and they wanted to be known, then I started to second guess myself. Like, maybe I should expect that out of me.
It's not what I really want, but should I?
Right. And where it's something that other people think that how could you not want that? How could it makes it tough because at every turn, instead of people going, that's awesome, you're making it, you're doing it in comedy, it's you quit, man, why
would you do that?
And some people you could explain it to and some people you couldn't, but when it really got down to it, it's like I didn't care. The person I was living my life for was me.
Right.
And for me and for what I had chosen at some point in life, for whatever reason, I wanted to be around my family as they grew. I wanted to go skiing with them. I wanted to play baseball with them. I wanted to watch them grow. I didn't want to hear how the school play went again, right from some bar in the northeast corner of northern Nantucket.
You want your kids to know you.
Yeah. And then that was back to the expectations. I just had to I had to really regroup and see what my expectations were. They tell you some things that if you want something bad enough, you'll be willing to do anything to do it, right?
Right.
And a close friend of mine, he said something really interesting one time. We were talking about this, and I was kind of talking about how sometimes, even though I know I made the right choice, still, you little strapped for money, or you have to look at a different career, or you're not so happy, not doing what you may be doing. And if you had something that you could have possibly done that other people think that you were crazy for letting go, and even sometimes I think I was crazy. Why did I let that go? But it's always based around the things that I'm not judging my success off of. It was
Right.
based off of money. It was based off of fame. It was based off being put in a position to be able to maybe be a part of something bigger or different, which isn't bad, but I wanted this thing first. My family first, and if it has
Right.
to be for 18 years while my kids grow up, and I got 3 of them, so it'll probably be 23 years by the time it's done. If I have to dedicate 23 years of my life to seeing that they get a good start, who knows? Maybe I'll go back and
That was your priority,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. Once I've got that out of the way, I don't know what might the next step be. Maybe I'll have that to fall back on, that I know I can do that, and I'll be like Rodney Dangerfield, who went back in his later years and became extremely successful.
Coming out of retirement.
That's right.
Dave Stitcher coming out of retirement.
I'll be looking to get my respect.
Yeah.
What
Good
the
luck with
respect
that.
Rodney couldn't get, I'll see if I can find
Yeah.
it.
You know how that goes.
Yeah.
But obviously, I know that you have a beautiful family, wonderful family, kids,
Thank you.
and so you've definitely reached that goal, and it's and as you've mentioned just now, it's really been a blessing in your life, and it's really helped you to achieve what you wanted to inside. Tell me just briefly how it's affected other people,
Well,
other than the fact that your kids were born and so they have a life.
right. Well, they would have been born somewhere. Sometimes they maybe think they might have been better off being born into a different home, but hey, they got mine, so there they are. And I mean, definitely, it's affected a lot of people's lives. Just by telling the story, I think sometimes you can see people thinking about, what did I choose? Did I really follow what was me? And that was what I was going to say before, and then I got kind of sidetracked. That'll happen with me easily, but a friend of mine, he had said, what he said was, obviously, that wasn't your passion, being
Yeah.
a comedian. He's like, you would have followed it had it have been. He's like, but no, you followed what was even though career-wise, I haven't found a passion since then, but that wasn't a passion. It was just fun to get paid to make people laugh, and we got to see new cities all the time. And, but, it really made me realize that, yeah, I am following my passion.
Yes.
And I got to stop still letting other people's expectations or the societal expectations, the things that we're supposed to always choose the thing that we're the most talented at and that could bring the most money.
Right.
And then on the other hand, you hear the things that they say, if money didn't matter, and even if you were broke the rest of your life, what's the thing that you would want to do? I mean, realistically for me, ski.
Okay. Well, maybe there's a career there for you.
Yeah, I could have been a ski instructor, and I dabbled in that a little bit, but I did it for fun. And when it became a job, it wasn't the same.
Well, and you run across people too. I mean, I've seen people that have had a definite talent in something, but their heart really wasn't in it.
Right.
And it never worked out for them because it just wasn't what they wanted to do.
Yeah, for me, and it's a struggle sometimes, because sometimes you look at the money you might have possibly made, and you wonder, what your family could have done with that money, and did I let my family down by not being able to do both? But then it always comes back to, I know I wouldn't have done both.
Right.
And I probably wouldn't have had my family.
Realistic.
Yeah.
And you probably wouldn't have the relationship you have with them now if you hadn't done it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
things have a way of working out too. When you make the right choice and you follow your heart, you might always have some questions, but at least you made that right decision, and you can see the effects of that decision right now. And I know your kids, and they love you as a dad, and you're definitely a good father and a good husband, and so they've been blessed by the decision that you've made.
Yeah, I'm gonna do these recordings more often with you. I'm gonna walk out of here feeling 9 feet
Yeah,
tall.
that's right.
but yeah, no, and that's exactly it. I mean, you gotta judge off that. And and to finish out, you said how it's affected other people. It's a story to tell. And I can be sincere about it. And maybe if there's somebody that felt that they sold out, or felt that they're overwhelmed by a choice, that maybe they'll have the ability. Again, back to what my dad said. Who said the fork has to go on the left?
Right.
Maybe it made sense at some point in life, but why does it now?
Yes.
Who said that you have to make this amount of money?
Right.
Maybe may move somewhere and make less money and do what you want to do.
Right. And I think that's important, because a lot of times you see people that have worked themselves into a career, and they feel like they just can't stop. And obviously we need to make money to take care of ourselves and families and things like that as well. But it's never too late to do something that you have a passion for, and you should never use an excuse as that I'm too successful in this one area of my life not to follow a passion.
Right. Yeah, and if you plan ahead, okay, so maybe you're stuck to it for the next 5 years till your kids are out of the house, or till your wife's done with whatever she's doing, or
Right.
whatever it may be. But at some point, still, I mean, for me personally, I think how sad would it be to get to the end of this existence and to have known that you had a whole bunch of other things that you really would have rather done and that you
Right.
could have done.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about the things that you shouldn't have done or that you might have never achieved.
Right.
I could never be a ballerina, no matter how hard I tried.
Was that your passion? Or?
No, but I could have never been one had it have been.
Right.
It's not a lot of ballerinas. I could have maybe played the bull in some sort of like Spanish opera or something like that.
There you go. Well, yeah.
They would have.
That was your goal.
Es el dancer el toro. Here comes our dancing bull. So,
yeah, you never know.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't think many people want to see me in a tutu and some leotards, but the horns might take the
right. Well, hopefully they focus on that.
Exactly. So yeah. So overall, gotta just judge it off the real things. And
right.
I think our society's gotten too much on money and status, and you hear it, and I don't mean it tritely. I mean that if that's the only indicator of success,
it's probably not the best indicator if it's the only indicator of success.
Yeah.
And again, it's a matter of looking to your heart, looking to what your passion is, and trying to achieve that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's what it is.
Well, thanks so much, Dave. I really appreciate it. I really like how you brought out a different aspect of success, and that it's not just always making the big time, making the big money, but it's doing something that you have a passion for. And I have a feeling that when you do what is your passion, everything else seems to work out.
Yeah.
And I think you're a great example of that. So I appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. Anything else? Any last comments?
No, I just appreciate the time, and thank you for inviting me to do this, and hopefully that somebody else can find their success the same way and find what makes them feel like it's all worth it.
Yes, very good story. Well, thanks so much. This is Scott Newberger from Lifecharge Consulting, and this is Dave Stitcher, professional comedian and a family man. And please, if you have any of your own successes that you'd like to share, feel free to post. Thanks.